Have you ever wondered how the Indian National Congress, one of the most influential political parties in India, came to be? This isn't just a question about politics, it's a question about history, culture, and the spirit of a nation. Well, it's a fascinating story, so let's dive right in. The year was 1885. The place, Bombay, British India. In the heart of the 19th century, a whirlwind of change was brewing in the Indian subcontinent. Under the British Raj, the country was witnessing an era of rapid industrialization and westernization. Yet alongside these advancements, there was a growing unrest. The Indian people were yearning for representation, for a voice that could echo their concerns. In the midst of this political and social turbulence emerged a man named Alan Octavian Hume. A retired British civil servant, Hume was a visionary who saw the potential of unity in diversity. He recognized the need for an organization that could channel the growing discontent among Indians into a structured, peaceful movement for political reform. Hume, along with prominent Indian leaders such as Dadabhai Naoroji, Dinshaw Wacha, and Umesh Chandra Banerjee, started to conceive a plan. They envisioned an assembly, a congress, where educated Indians could discuss their grievances and propose solutions. This was not a rebellion, but a plea for representation, for inclusion in the governance of their own land. The idea was revolutionary. Never before had such an assembly been proposed, where Indians from all walks of life, irrespective of their caste, creed, or religion, could gather under one roof. The goal was clear: to create a platform for dialogue, to bring the Indian perspective to the fore, to resist the injustices of colonial rule through peaceful and constitutional means. The proposal was met with both enthusiasm and skepticism. But the winds of change were unstoppable. With the help of influential Indians and some sympathetic British officials, the groundwork began. A call was sent out to prominent Indian leaders from all corners of the country. They were invited to Bombay to be part of this historic assembly. And thus, on December 28, 1885, the Indian National Congress was born. With 72 delegates from all over India, the Indian National Congress began its journey. It was December of 1885, a time when the Indian subcontinent was under the heavy yoke of British colonial rule. The Congress was born out of a desire for change, a yearning for a better future for India and her people. At the heart of the Congress's initial goals was the pursuit of greater representation for Indians in their own government. They believed that the people of India deserved a say in the decisions that shaped their lives. After all, who better to understand the needs and aspirations of Indians than Indians themselves? To this end, the Congress sought to increase the number of Indian members in the legislative councils. They called for the expansion of the council's powers, advocating for a council that could not only advise but also legislate. The Congress also championed the introduction of competitive examinations in India for the Indian Civil Service, a prestigious administrative service that was, at the time, dominated by the British. But the Congress's ambitions extended beyond the political sphere. They recognized that for India to truly progress, social reforms were necessary. The Congress began to push for the eradication of social evils, such as child marriage and the caste system. They championed women's rights, arguing for the importance of female education. They sought to promote unity and harmony amongst the diverse religious and ethnic communities of India, aiming to foster a sense of national identity that transcended individual differences. The Congress's approach during these early years was marked by moderation. They believed in the power of peaceful dialogue and negotiation. They hoped that by presenting their demands reasonably and rationally, they could persuade the British to implement the necessary reforms. Their faith in the British sense of justice and fair play was unshakable. However, it's important to note that this moderate stance was not without its critics. Many felt that the Congress's demands were too mild, their approach too passive. But that's a story for another time. The early years of the Congress were marked with moderate demands and a peaceful approach. These were the foundational years that shaped the Congress's identity and set the stage for the monumental struggles that lay ahead. However, as the 20th century dawned, so did a new ideology within the Congress. This marked a significant turning point in the history of the Indian National Congress, a shift from moderate to more radical demands. The initial years of the Congress were characterized by moderate demands, primarily focused on administrative reforms and greater representation for Indians in government. This was a time when the Congress sought to work within the framework of British rule, aiming to achieve its goals through peaceful dialogues and petitions. Yet, as the years rolled on, the Congress began to evolve. The turn of the century witnessed a marked shift in the ideology of the Congress, a shift that was driven by a new generation of leaders who felt the need for more assertive action. Among them was a dynamic figure, Bal Gangadhar Tilak, a man who played a pivotal role in this ideological shift. Tilak, often referred to as the father of Indian unrest, was a strong proponent of Swaraj or self-rule. He believed that Indians should have the right to govern themselves, a radical departure from the earlier moderate demands of the Congress. His famous mantra, "Swaraj is my birthright and I shall have it," resonated with the masses, inspiring a sense of patriotism and a desire for independence. This shift in ideology did not happen overnight. It was a gradual process, marked by intense debates and disagreements within the Congress. Yet it was a necessary transformation, one that reflected the changing aspirations of the Indian people. The Congress was no longer just a platform for moderate demands. It had become a force that was calling for complete independence, a force that was ready to challenge the very foundations of British rule in India. This shift in ideology, from moderate to radical demands, from seeking administrative reforms to demanding Swaraj, marked a new chapter in the history of the Indian National Congress, a chapter that set the stage for the epic struggle for independence that was to follow. The Congress had evolved from a platform of moderate demands to a force calling for complete independence. The Congress played a pivotal role in India's struggle for independence. This chapter of our story begins in the early 20th century, when the Congress adopted a more radical approach towards colonial rule. Their pacifist resistance against the British was a turning point in the freedom struggle. In the 1920s, the non-cooperation movement was ignited. Spearheaded by Mahatma Gandhi, this movement called for Indians to abstain from supporting the British government in any form. This was a significant shift from mere demands for rights to a full-blown refusal to cooperate with the colonial power. The movement gained momentum, and the British authorities were met with widespread non-compliance. The non-cooperation movement was followed by the civil disobedience movement in 1930. The Congress led the people in breaking unjust laws imposed by the British, reaching a crescendo with the historic Salt March. Gandhi, along with his followers, marched over 200 miles to make their own salt, defying the British monopoly on its production. This act of defiance was a powerful symbol of resistance and a rallying point for the Indian people in their struggle for independence. In the midst of World War II, the Congress launched the Quit India movement in 1942. This was a call for immediate independence, a demand for the British to quit India. It was a clear and direct challenge to the colonial rule, representing the growing strength and resolve of the Indian people. The Congress's strategy of non-violent resistance, civil disobedience, and non-cooperation shook the very foundations of the British Empire. Their relentless pursuit of freedom, despite the many challenges and sacrifices, was instrumental in paving the way for India's independence. Each of these movements, led by the Congress, played a significant role in weakening the grip of the British rule and progressively led the nation closer to freedom. The Congress's leadership and the people's unwavering support for these movements built a strong foundation for the fight for independence. Finally, in 1947, India achieved its independence, marking a significant victory for the Congress. This was not just a political victory, but a triumph of the human spirit, a testament to the power of peaceful resistance and the indomitable will of a people yearning for freedom. So, what have we learned about the formation and goals of the Indian National Congress? We've delved into the birth of the Indian National Congress in the year 1885, a pivotal moment in Indian history. This was an era marked by a collective awakening among Indians, leading to the establishment of a platform for political dialogue and action. The Congress, in its early years, had a moderate approach, seeking reforms within the framework of British rule. Their initial goals were administrative and legislative improvements, advocating for a larger role for Indians in governance and the protection of their civil rights. But as the years rolled by, a shift in ideology occurred. The moderates were slowly replaced by a new generation of leaders who were not content with mere reforms. They sought nothing less than Purna Swaraj, or complete independence. This ideological shift was not merely a change in strategy, but a reflection of the rising nationalistic fervor among the Indian populace. The Indian National Congress then took center stage in the struggle for independence. They organized mass movements, civil disobedience campaigns, and non-cooperation drives, challenging the might of the British Empire. They were not just a political organization anymore, but a symbol of unity, resilience, and the aspiration of a nation yearning for freedom. In conclusion, the formation and journey of the Indian National Congress is not just a chapter in a history book. It's a story of a nation's awakening, of its struggle, and ultimately its triumph over colonial rule. From its inception to India's independence, the journey of the Indian National Congress is a testament to the spirit of resilience and determination.